eventually Julius Rosenwald becomes the president of Sears Roebuck and Company, the largest retailer in the world. Amazon, before Amazon was ever a glimmer in its mother's eye. Just it's difficult to overstate what a big deal Sears was during this time period. And so Julius Rosenwald becomes sort of fantastically wealthy through, by what he says, by virtue of chance and proximity. That's how he becomes fantastically wealthy. Please note, he does not try to say, well, I bootstrapped my way to billionaire status, right? He doesn't say, oh, I did it all on my own. He has the modern equivalent of billions of dollars. He is the modern equivalent of a billionaire. He says he came into his money by virtue of chance and proximity. And this is also an important point. He is given Booker T. Washington's book, Up from Slavery. He is given that book by a friend. And he reads the book, and the book changes his life. And he eventually befriends Booker T. Washington, becomes a benefactor of the Tuskegee Institute, asks Booker T. Washington, how can I help you? And one of the things that Booker T suggests after he has made a bequest to Tuskegee, they have a few $1,000s left. And Booker T. Washington writes to Julius Rosenwald and says, what do you think if we take these remaining few $1,000s that you've given me and we build a couple of small school buildings not far from here, because so many of the students here in Alabama don't have even a school building to attend because the state of Alabama was not providing hardly anything at all for the education of Black students. And so Julius Rosenwald says, yes, that sounds like a great idea. And to make a long story short, again, I'll let you read the full story in the book, but to make a long story short, by the time Julius Rosenwald dies, he has helped fund more than 5,000 schools in the United States. 5,000 schools. That's an insane accomplishment, right? Like if you said, "Hey Sharon, I started a school," I'd be like, "Dang, that's really great. Good for you." Right? If you even started 5 schools, I'd be like, "You have 5 schools? That's incredible." And now imagine somebody having helped start 5,000 schools. That is the impact of 5,000 schools on the thousands of students who are able to access education, their children who now have educated parents, their own parents, their own grandparents that they're able to provide for because they have an education. The impact of these schools is really, really difficult to even estimate. It's probably tens of millions of people like John Lewis, people like Toni Morrison who attended these schools. The impact that the students had on the course of history is, again, it's probably tens of millions of people, billions of dollars, incredible scientific advancements, incredible arts achievement, civil rights movement, workers who are able to access education because, why? Because Julius Rosenwald was given Booker T. Washington's book, right? And the idea that a book can change the world, that is really fresh in my mind. Of course, Booker T. Washington had to be courageous enough to share his story. And he had to, his book Up from Slavery has never been out of print since the time it was written. And Julius Rosenwald had to be receptive to hear the message. And he was, and again, I won't share the whole story, but I just love the idea that Booker T. Washington's courage to share his own story had such an incredible impact, practical impact, not just like a mental impact of wow, I learned a lot, practical impact on being able to educate hundreds of thousands of students who would not have been able to access education without it.
Yeah, that was one of my favorite stories. So definitely for our listener, check out the full book so you can hear it in its entirety. I want to shift a little bit to voting because again, kind of like the civil rights movement, the suffrage movement kind of is highlighted by a few names like Susan B. Anthony. And I was wondering, could you tell a lot of lesser known suffragists, people that played a big part in the suffrage movement? Can you talk about some of those, how they contributed to that movement and why they may have been less historically overknown? Even like the Hello Girls, for example.
Yeah. Yeah. So there's a few different, as you mentioned, a few different suffrage workers that I profile in the work in the book. One group of women who is really overlooked in the conversation about suffrage. So a couple of things are important to note about women's suffrage, like women gaining the right to vote. Women worked and organized for more than 70 years to gain the right to vote. This was not a like we had a couple of marches and then everybody changed their mind, right? This is decades of work put in primarily before the passage of the 19th Amendment, where white women are given the right to vote nationwide. Black women had to continue to work for equal access to the ballot for decades beyond that, right? So women did not just do a couple of things like we had some ideas and we baked some cookies and we got the right to vote. This took a very, very long time and it required effort by a lot of different people.
If you enjoyed that clip, make sure you head over to www.bookumapp.com to download our app so you can connect with your favorite bookish content creators, start conversations, and start your own book club.